Blackhawks lose game one in Florida 3-2 versus the defending champions. But honestly, it was a pretty fun game, and I think that's going to be a common theme throughout this season. Even the losses are going to be a lot more entertaining. Just to get right into it with the game script, it went very similarly to how I thought it was going to go. If you saw my game preview video, I said the first period was going to be critical for the Blackhawks to stay in the game. As I expected and mentioned in that video, the energy throughout the building was high. The vibes were really good in Florida, and that energy translated right into puck drop and throughout the first period. The Blackhawks got dominated in the first period. Shots were like 15-3 or something along those lines in the first period, but the Blackhawks did get on the board first off a Frank Nazar breakaway goal. A lot more on him later in this video. But the Blackhawks were able to hang in there. They were able to keep the game close. They kept it within one after the first period. Nick Foligno dropped the gloves, and they were really just able to hang in there, and that was largely due to Spencer Knight's play. Overall, on the night, he stopped 34 of 37 shots, and in the first period especially, he kept the Blackhawks in that game. This isn't to call out any previous Blackhawks goaltenders, but we've seen in years past in games like this where the Panthers are able to put up like 3 or 4 goals in this first period, the game gets out of reach and the team is just dead because when you're down 4-0, 4-1, you don't really feel like you have any chance the rest of the game. But because Knight was able to keep them in this one, the energy kind of spilled over. They were able to take a strongish end of the period, but really come out in the second period and really start to take over control, settle into the game. That was apparent not just overall as a team, but especially in some individual players. I thought Sam Rinzel and Artem Levchinov particularly were really overwhelmed in that first period. They were just throwing pucks when they got them, weren't really making the plays we know they can make when they're a little more calm or there's a little less pressure on, and I don't blame them for that. We have to remember these are young guys. There's going to be growing pains, and these are the growing pains that have been talked about. There's a lot of talk like, yeah, Levchinov just needs to develop, and this is the development. He's going to be a little overwhelmed. He's got to work on his composure and stuff early on in the game, and we saw later on he settled in a bit, and especially in the third period specifically for Levchinov, he was creating a ton of chances offensively. He had a few really good shots off of great passes or feeds from Wyatt Kaiser, but it was Levchinov really building as the game went on and as he settled in more and more. I have to talk about Frank Nazar. He was unbelievable today, arguably the Blackhawks' best player. Actually, I can't say that because there's a few guys especially that we'll talk about here in a second, but Frank Nazar was unreal today, had that breakaway goal in the first period. We've seen his finishing since really the start of the end of last season. Since the end of last season has been a lot better. We saw last season some of these breakaways wouldn't be converted. He'd have a lot of chances, but he wasn't capitalizing on them. And for him to get on the board early on his first real big chance of the regular season, it's a great sign. He had 2 points because he came out in the second period and assisted on a goal to Teuvo Teravainen off a 2-on-1 play. The Blackhawks really started to turn this game around at the start of the second period. Ilya Mikheyev on the first shift had a breakaway, and then the Nazar to Teuvo goal to start that second period really started to turn this game around. They just had to settle and get through the first period. They were able to do that while keeping the game close, and through the second period, it was a 2-2 tie game. They actually got more shot chances, more shot attempts than Florida did in that second period. So it was a really good second period for the Blackhawks. I think they had more chances in that period overall, and they were able to keep it a tie game after 2. I talked about Nazar and Teuvo, but I also have to bring up Tyler Bertuzzi, who's been notoriously a slow starter, not great in early regular season games, but I thought he was really, really good today, just making small plays that ended up building into like the goals that the Blackhawks scored. On the first goal, he had a great chip up to Nazar for him to get the breakaway. On the second goal, he had a really nice play off the wall to set up Nazar and Teuvo on the 2-on-1. He had another chance where he jumped and caught a puck that was hoisted up high, and he kept it in the zone, created a chance for Matt Grzelcyk, who had a good quality shot off. I'm not sure we've ever seen Bertuzzi with that kind of athleticism, but he was really good today, and that line, the Teuvo, Nazar, Bertuzzi line, looks really, really good to start off. I said that might be the best Blackhawks overall line, and it looks like that's going to be the case here, at least early on in the season. They were really good today. The top line with Connor Bedard was all right. And really, Connor Bedard was good. He had a ton of really good chances. His shot looked really good. He had a one-timer in the second period that was a rocket. On his first shift of the game, he had a rip toe drag release shot off the crossbar. So he was really good generating chances. He walked Seth Jones, created a quality shot there. He had a really nice pass to Colton Dach, who unfortunately couldn't get a good shot off that play, but his playmaking was really good. We know Florida has some of the best defenders in the league, so for him to have this many chances in his first game, even though he didn't register a point, it was still a really good sign. Really happy with what we saw out of Connor today. However, his line wasn't great. I thought Ryan Donato had some flashes, but to start the third period, Jeff Blashill swapped him with Ilya Mikheyev, who got bumped up to the first line for the third period. Now, if you guys have been watching the videos, you know how I felt about that move. I absolutely love it. I've been calling, or at least I would have wanted Ilya Mikheyev to start on the top line. So I was happy to see him get some run there. Andrei Burakovsky, not great tonight. I still think it's going to take a little time before we can make a judgment on whether he should be playing on the top line or not. I think it's still too early to call. I know a lot of people weren't happy with his play and haven't really liked what they've seen out of him in the preseason, but I'm not reading too much into it yet. It's still very, very early. We need to see a few more games with this line until we can actually make some conclusions. I guess just to finish out the game script here, the third period was pretty good for the Blackhawks. It was actually kind of back and forth. They were pushing for offense, and that led to some really good chances for the Panthers, but it was Spencer Knight who just made save on save on save. And some of these were really high quality chances. They had a few odd man rushes, multiple one-on-one chances that resulted in really good shots for Florida, and Knight answered pretty much every time. He stopped 34 of 37 shots on the day. He was amazing in his return game to Florida. Really happy to see that. This will be a big year, his first year as a starter, so he's getting off on a strong foot, and he allowed the Blackhawks to be in this game all the way until the very end. They created some good chances, especially later in the game. There were multiple chances where they could have tied this game. Now, the power play wasn't great. They didn't handle the pressure very well from Florida. I think the penalty kill that Jeff Blashill has been trying to implement is what Florida kind of runs. They run the aggressive penalty kill, and I think what we saw today where the Panthers were really disrupting the Blackhawks on the power play, that's what we're hoping to see the Blackhawks do on the flip side to opposing teams' power plays. But the Panthers definitely won the special teams battle today. They scored a power play goal earlier in the game, and the Blackhawks power play was more or less shut down. And like I said, they were still in it to the end of the game. They still were able to generate chances, which is a really good sign. If we're taking a overall takeaway from this game, it's a major positive that they were competitive throughout the game. Obviously, that first period is one of the toughest circumstances you can be in, playing the first game of the season versus the defending champs right after they raised their banner. But they really handled themselves well after they got through that. The young players, like I mentioned, that struggled in the first period really started to come alive and create some really solid plays. I thought, talking about the defense now, the top pair of Matt Grzelcyk, Sam Rizzo was not bad. I actually thought Grzelcyk played really well. I was pretty surprised by that because he hasn't had a great preseason, and I was a little bit concerned for him coming in and playing on the top pair. Now, obviously, don't get me wrong, Alex Vlasic we can't have him back soon enough. However, I thought Grzelcyk handled himself pretty well being thrown in here to the first line after only getting a few looks in the preseason and really practicing on the 7th or 8th as the 7th or 8th defenseman throughout training camp. So to be thrown in on the top pair and play pretty decent minutes, I thought he handled himself really well. The second pair with Wyatt Kaiser and Artem Levchinov was good and better as the game went along. I thought Wyatt Kaiser did an unreal job of really holding that pair together because Levchinov, like I said, struggled early but really came alive as the game went on. Obviously, a lot of work for him defensively, but again, he's 19 years old and he's playing in a crazy environment here in Florida. This was a big national TV, high stakes, high pressure game, so I'm not reading too much into it, but I have to shout out Kaiser for really holding that pair together and playing really well, playing like a veteran even though he was spending time in the AHL last year. I think I got a little bit out of order here. I forgot to mention the bottom six forward group. I just have to shout out the fourth line who I thought really played well. Nick Foligno, Ryan Green, and Sam Lafferty. Ryan Green handled himself really good. We expected him to get around 8 minutes getting called up from Rockford, and that's exactly what happened. and I thought he played really well. The fourth line had a few shifts where they controlled play in the offensive zone, and if you can get that out of your fourth line, you'll definitely take it. So I was pleasantly surprised by the bottom six. I thought it was a pretty good game all around. I know I got a little bit out of order. Last thing I do want to touch on here before we get out of here. I know I was a little out of order, but I think I covered everything in this one. But I do want to go over your guys' takeaways. I post on Twitter after all the games at Blackhawks Focus, just asking for you guys' takeaways. I'll read through some of these, give my thoughts. First one here, really like Nazar, Kaiser, and Knight. Didn't really like the other young defensemen. Bedard needs legit line mates, and the power play needs a lot of work. So, yeah, the defensemen, like I talked about, it was a tough environment for them stepping in here, and I think we just need to expect these growing pains. Obviously, they were a little rough defensively, a little panicky with the puck, but I think they just, more games, more experience under their belt. That's kind of the whole point of this season, is to really give these guys more experience so they can develop into the players we know they have the potential to be. But Bedard needs legit line mates. Yeah, that we'll see what the line combinations ends up being. It's kind of tough because really the best two wingers on the team, or at least the best one, is Teuvo Teravainen for sure. And then you have him playing with another pretty good winger in Tyler Bertuzzi. But those guys are on the second line with Frank Nazar. You see them elevating Frank Nazar. Like, not to take anything away from Frank Nazar, but he's playing with two of the better wingers on the team. So it's really good to see that line working. But now since that line's working, you're not going to mess it up. Kind of leaves Bedard out to dry a bit. I think it's really going to be a little bit of trial and error throughout the start of this season, as much as we hate to say it with how much the lines were jumbled last year. It's going to take a little bit till you can really find that chemistry, and hopefully when they find someone that works, they stick together for a while. Next one says, all the Renzel hype needs to calm down. Kind of just touched on this. I think we have to pump the brakes a little bit if we're hating on Renzel. I mean, this, again, was a really tough game. I still like what I saw, especially late game. He was generating a lot of chances. Plus, he was playing with Matt Grzelcyk, not to take anything away from him, but that's not going to be his typical D partner. It's also not a guy he spent a lot of time with. He was a little panicky with the puck early in the game, but I think he will kind of settle in as he settles in and gets a little more games under his belt. I mean, this was only his 10th NHL game. I expect him to be better and better. Vlasic is needed as a stabilizer for the defense as a whole. Totally agree. Alex Vlasic would have really, really helped in this game. Just someone to be composed and calm with the puck, and really just like calm and solid defensively and reliable defensively. Definitely was a huge loss for this game. I agree with the decision to keep him out. Want to make sure he's healthy, but yeah, it kind of stunk because the Blackhawks really could have used him in this game, and for them to, keep it a 1-goal game without really their top defender, pretty impressive. This team is young and raw. Expect similar games, but for it to probably get better, totally agree. I think was a really good sign to start the season that they kept it close. Did get outshot, did get outplayed, especially in that first period, but I think it was still a really strong start to the season. Well played for what they have as a roster currently. Kept it close. Totally agree. Spencer looked good. Hopefully he stays consistent. Again, that consistency with Spencer Knight, I've mentioned this in previous videos, especially the one that I talked about him after his contract extension. We really just want to see that consistency from him. We know how good he can be. Take this game, for example. He made so many really good saves, but we just need to see stretches of games where he's playing at his A game and he's not, off and letting pucks leak through or anything. But if we can get effort similar to tonight, every night, he'll be one of the best goalies in the league, obviously. But even if it's not quite as good as tonight was, because he was unreal, if we can just get these consistent efforts out of him, we'll be in a good spot. First period was awful, but overall better than I expected. Spencer Knight's a stud. Exactly. Definitely talked about that first period plenty already. It's a start. Now work out the kinks and see what we got. Standouts, Nazar and Knight, and great potential in the young D-man. Definitely agree with that. And they were fun to watch. Kept it close. Good team. Knight kept it close. For sure, Knight was unreal, and Bedard still has no help. Yeah, again, I just mentioned that, but hopefully he can find some chemistry with someone on this team, and hopefully that someone's Eli Mikheyev. I really like to see that on the top pair, but that is going to do it for this video. Next game is in Boston. Going to have these post-game recaps after every single game, so make sure to stay tuned, stay tapped in for those, and yeah, hopefully we can get another good effort out of the team in Boston, and if they can give an effort close to what they gave tonight, they should be able to get a win. Hopefully, we'll see what happens. But have that video coming out after Tuesday's or Thursday's game. So stay tuned for that one. Overall, fun game. That's going to do it for this one.